Why does life feel so expensive, even when your salary looks good on paper? Why do people in the United States earn more but still feel broke, while many Europeans earn less yet report a higher sense of financial stability? If you've ever looked at rent prices, grocery bills, healthcare costs, or childcare expenses and wondered, how is anyone supposed to keep up? You're not imagining it. Across the Western world, people are working more, stressing more, and saving less. But the reasons life feels expensive aren't the same everywhere. In the United States, rising costs are often tied to privatized essentials, debt, and individual responsibility. In Europe, higher taxes and energy prices dominate the conversation, but those costs often come with built-in protections most Americans don't have. On the surface, both sides complain about affordability. Underneath, they're paying for very different systems. Today, we're breaking down why life feels more expensive in the US versus Europe, looking beyond salaries and headlines to examine housing, healthcare, transportation, education, food, and social safety nets. This isn't about which system is perfect. It's about understanding where the money actually goes, and why everyday life feels financially heavier depending on where you live. Before we dive in, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. These comparisons take serious research, and your support helps keep this content honest, balanced, and grounded in facts rather than ideology. Now let's start with the biggest expense shaping modern life, and the one most people underestimate until it's too late: housing. In the United States, housing has increasingly become a speculative asset rather than a basic necessity. From 2020 through 2025, home prices rose far faster than wages in most major metro areas. Angeles, New York, Austin, Miami, and Seattle saw rents double in less time. In Europe, housing costs are also high, but structured differently. Major cities like London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Berlin are undeniably expensive, sometimes rivaling or exceeding US cities in raw rent numbers. The difference is stability. Long-term rental contracts, rent control policies, and stronger tenant protections mean Europeans are less likely to face sudden rent spikes or eviction. In many countries, renting is not seen as a failure or temporary phase. It's a lifelong, normalized option. In the US, home ownership is still culturally framed as success, which pressures people into mortgages they can barely afford. This difference alone shapes how expensive life feels. Americans often carry housing anxiety, fear of rising rents, interest rates, or losing access entirely. Europeans may complain about high rents, but the fear of sudden displacement is usually lower. Healthcare is the next massive divider, and it's where Americans feel cost pressure most intensely. In the US, healthcare is often the single most financially destabilizing factor in a person's life. Even with insurance, deductibles, co-pays, surprise bills, and out-of-network charges add up quickly. By 2025, medical debt remained one of the leading causes of personal bankruptcy in the United States. Many Americans delay doctor visits, skip prescriptions, or avoid preventative care. Not because they don't value health, but because they fear the bill. Europe approaches healthcare from the opposite direction. While systems vary by country, healthcare is largely treated as a public service rather than a market product. Taxes fund universal or near-universal coverage. Waiting times can be longer for non-urgent care, and bureaucratic inefficiencies do exist, but the fear of financial ruin due to illness is far lower. When Europeans talk about healthcare costs, they usually mean taxes, not bills arriving months later. This creates a psychological difference. Americans feel like they are one accident away. Transportation is another hidden cost that shapes daily life. In the United States, car ownership is often mandatory. Urban sprawl, limited public transit, and zoning laws force millions of people to drive just to work, shop, or socialize. Car payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance, parking, and repairs quietly drain income every month. By 2025, average car prices and interest rates made vehicle ownership more expensive than ever, especially for younger workers. Europe, by contrast, builds cities around public transit. Trains, buses, trams, and walkable neighborhoods reduce reliance on cars. Fuel prices are higher, but fewer people need to drive daily. A European household might spend more per liter of fuel but far less overall on transportation. When life feels expensive in the US, it's often because people are paying for infrastructure individually instead of collectively. In Europe, university education is heavily subsidized or free in many countries. Students still face living costs, but tuition rarely becomes a lifelong burden. As a result, young Europeans start adult life with fewer financial chains. Americans often begin adulthood already behind, carrying debt before their careers even stabilize. Taxes are where many Americans assume Europe must be more expensive, and on paper, that's true. European tax rates are generally higher, especially income and value-added taxes. Childcare illustrates this perfectly. In the US, childcare can rival rent or mortgage payments. Many parents are forced to choose between career and family because the numbers simply don't work. In much of Europe, childcare is subsidized or capped as a percentage of income. Families still budget carefully, but the system absorbs part of the burden. Food costs are often misunderstood. Groceries in Europe can be cheaper relative to income, especially for basic staples. Regulations on food quality, subsidies, and shorter supply chains play a role. In the US, food prices rose sharply through. Social safety nets shape how expensive life feels during bad times. In the US, job loss often means in Europe, unemployment benefits, housing assistance, and retraining programs soften the fall. People still struggle, but the system slows the descent. This doesn't mean Europe is cheap or stress-free. Energy prices, especially after geopolitical shocks, hit Europeans hard. Taxes are unavoidable. Bureaucracy can be frustrating. Salaries are often lower, especially in tech and finance. Many Europeans feel stuck financially, particularly younger generations facing housing shortages. Meanwhile, Americans enjoy higher earning potential, especially for top performers. Entrepreneurship, investment opportunities, and career mobility can be faster. The US rewards risk more, but it also punishes failure more severely. So why does life feel more expensive? In the United States, costs are unpredictable, individualized, and often delayed until they explode. In Europe, costs are more predictable, shared, and front-loaded through taxes. Americans feel constant pressure because financial responsibility rests heavily on the individual. Europeans feel constrained because the system decides more for them. Neither system is perfect. One trades freedom for security. The other trades security for opportunity. By early 2026, one thing is clear: the feeling of expense isn't just about prices, it's about risk. Life feels more expensive where the consequences of mistakes are harsher and support is thinner. That's why two people earning the same purchasing power can feel completely different levels of financial stress depending on where they live.